Welcome to Trim Gem. This is the quick video overview. I'm going to make a more in-depth overview later on. As for right now, I think this is good enough to get you guys up and running. Okay, so let's just click off of that here. And first thing we need to do is get a project loaded. To do that, we start up here and we see no Trim Gem project loaded. We want to create one. So I can left click to browse for an image, or I can left click here to browse for an image, or I can have a material that has a color map, base color map, or diffuse map like that set in a standard, one of the top renderers for 3ds Max, and I can just right click. And what we'll do here is we're going to actually grab that texture right from that material and then set it into the project system here. Then we can just click create project. Now we have a project ready to go, so we can create sizes here. Okay. The other way to load a project would be to first let's unlock that. Then we go into the projects directory. We can click refresh here. The list has been refreshed. This bar of soap is important because you see here, without it turned on, we see another project here. But this project, when I double click it, it's no library. There's no Trim Gem TGMS file in there, which contains the coordinate data and other information. So it still exists there though, so we can right click to open that, and then we can get the files out and, try to save whatever we started to create, etc. So we don't want to get rid of it. If you don't end up fully creating a project, at least we hold on to it for a moment just till you verify you want to delete it. All right, so let's turn the soap back on so we can clean out the bad projects or the incomplete projects. Then I can select the project here and we get previews as we go down the list. I can left click and I can toggle between the regular map, the pre-trimmed map, and then the trim section mapped, which is just a preview of the pieces. So here is color overlay. Let's actually see if we can display this. Let's scale this up. So this texture has overlays for the trim pieces, but then I also turned on the edge function instead. So instead of creating more color overlays, we created bright edge pieces. Okay, so we can close this out. And now let's get into, well, let's just load that. We can either click load, we can open the directory to look at it. We can just click trim, we can load trim map to filter this. I'm sorry, I meant to say we can click the filter field. You can open up the Trim Gem project directory. We can also open up this information here so that we can get information on how to use things within the project library section, right? And don't forget, you're superhuman. You know you are. Okay, let's get into this. We're going to select, let's start off with the simpler one. Let's double click that. That will load into the system. We could also just select it and click load. Okay, there we go. So now we have these pieces that are pre-created for us from what I worked with this quad set here. So this is a plane that I just cut up into sections. Let me show you exactly what I did to create this, because this is the easiest way to create these trim pieces. Okay, so we create a plane and make sure it's the same exact height as width. Okay, then we go to length is 1, width is 1, and we're good to go. I convert that into an editable poly, and at this point I take the where is this thing? We have to go get it. There we go. 1 second, I'm still working here. Right there. You can drag and drop that right into the viewport. That is the wrong one. Here's the other one. So these are 2 trim maps that I'm including with the Trim Gem system here. Let's get into this. And I'm going to drag that one onto this other one that's already in use. I don't think I can close that out. It's covered over by my video overlay. Sorry about that. So let's get into this. So I have this material, this texture added to this plane, right? And what I'm going to do is turn on the face edges with F4. And then I'm going to Alt-1. And I'm going to zoom in a little bit. And I'm going to click close to the section, close to the spot that I want. Now, if you don't get the perfect spot, then later you can calculate and use the calculate section. There is this trim it section is based upon whatever elements we have selected, but you could also use this calculate pieces section, whereas make trim from calculating the position rather than this visual tool that I'm using right now. So now that I have that cut like so, what I can do is load this plane into SSUV to get an unwrap modifier. I'm going to go into polygon mode, which is 3. And then at this point, I know how I cut this. So I'm going to right click break so that all of these faces are broken into different elements. Okay. Now that they are broken into different elements, well, let's get into creating pieces with it. So let's just unlock that project. I'm going to right click to grab the texture off of this object. Then I'm going to click create project. And sure, we're duplicating projects. It doesn't really matter. Now I'm going to be sure I'm in polygon mode. I'm going to select the top ones, and then I'm going to click trim it. I'm going to see the working out button until it converts back to the trim gem button. That's after all of the trim gem pieces are made. So I can middle mouse button to get a preview here. Okay. Of the pieces. And now I can just click this one too. I could have just included it before, like just make all of the pieces in one go, but I'm just giving you some examples. There we go. There's that piece that's created now, and we're good to go. So at this point, that's something to be aware of. These image tag UI components, everywhere you see these images, this one, and all of these, they kind of prefer to overtake the clicks. Like if I try to close this, sometimes it might click the button instead. So it's best to not click anything that's overlaying these things for now. I might have to replace it with a different feature or a different UI component later on. So if you just see some odd behavior on these image tag type UI components, just know that that's a default behavior, and we'll work something different out. All right, so we have these pieces done, and let's select that and add that on. Okay, we can take this gold section and make it orange. We can take the orange section and make it gold. We can take these blue sections and make both of them orange. We can take all of these sections and make all of them orange. We can take all of these sections and make all of them SSUV entrances, or sorry, trim gem entranceways. I'm going to do the orange again. I'm going to select that and make that. There we go. I'm going to now select these two sections here, these two elements. I'm going to right click on this. What that's doing is moving those elements to those positions as they were currently standing. I need to explain this more in depth in a moment, but if I wanted to heal this and just make this into that bar, I can shift right click, and this will basically planar heal and map that to the coordinates that I have defined by that trim piece. Okay, so we can look at this again. We'll do that with the two orange pieces here, but I'll do it with the orange piece itself. Shift right click. There you are. Okay, so we've taken two previous elements and we've made them into one element. We didn't have to go do anything special. All we did was shift and right click. So we'll go through the specific mouse functions in a moment. I just want to get back to this operation here. I feel like I'm jumping around a little bit and I don't want to confuse anybody. Okay. So we created the trim gem pieces off of the selection set from when we cut the plane into pieces, right? So say we wanted to select this door. We want this door piece as a trim piece, right? So we know this is 1024 by 1024. The piece for 512 by 512 would probably be right here in the center. So we can say this is about 256 by 256, maybe 384 wide. So we're going to click these buttons until we get to that point. I can't get there unless I change the cell division. And you'll see here that the 1024 is divided by the cell division to create these step increment numbers. So left click decreases, right click increases. Okay, so the width is going to be 384, the height is going to be 256, and I need to set the position here for where that's going to begin, and I believe that's going to be, I don't know, let's just set it at like 240, I suppose. From the top, I'm not sure. From the left, we'll just right click, and drag it down a bit. Then from the top, we're going to say that's 256 high, so we want 768. We need to reset that, and then we'll climb up just like so. And hopefully I'm right. Let's click this and see what happens. Oh, I had already created one when I first clicked it. Okay, so let's see here. Let's just create. Oh, I'm not thinking. Let's create a plane. Yikes. 1, there we go. Collapse it. Load it. Right click. Material and assign it. Go into polygon mode. There we go. Click it. Assign it. There you go. So, I got pretty close. Good enough. It's just a bad example. We can just take this and scale it. Whatever we're doing, however you need to handle things. Okay, so back into this, we need to learn how to create calculated trim pieces besides for that sloppy one I just created. Let's make a good example here with a new project. Let's unload. Let's browse. We'll select this blue-green checker. Why not? Okay, it's 2048 by 2048. We'll create the project. We're going to create, well, we can't create 8 by 8 cells because that would be 64. Trim gym projects are limited to 48 images at this time. So, or 48 image buttons, 48 trim pieces per project. So we'd end up with an error. So let's go down to like 4 by 4. We'll get 16. We can go, let's go 36. So we'll divide that 6 by 6. And we'll click make trim. No, that's not correct. You know why? We need to click cells. So we shift and click cells as a safety measure because you'll notice this is going to take a little bit to process. Okay, so that took about 15 seconds. We're cutting up a 2048 texture map, gathering coordinates, then creating these image buttons and all that stuff. So while it's could be much faster if it was written in C++, we're not doing so bad with MaxScript, and there's some C# in this project, but I can't remember how much exactly. It's not a lot. Maybe the version 2 becomes Python. We'll see. All right, so let's continue in on this road. We have all these pieces created. We're going to now say that we want to divide that by 8. Now we have our segments at 256. We're going to take a few clicks here on the right clicks. Now we're at 50% point for the top left. So that will start the top left at the exact middle of the image. Now for the width, I'm going to set that to 2048 because now we're going to go into space outside of the texture. So it's going to give you the information that you know it wraps around, okay? So the height is fine. That's fine. Let's just click make trim and we'll just move ahead. All right, so we'll scroll down and we see the piece here. Middle mouse button to open up this little flyover. And we see that we have that piece created that's 2048 wide by 256 tall. And this solid color here shows us that it is a tiling section of that trim piece, okay? So while we know this is 2048, and that's only 1024 for these 4 squares, it's essentially just reordering that image in a different way. I'm not sure if that makes sense. So we have 1, 2, 3, and 4, and then this other part of this is the start of this image. It's 5, 6, 7, 8 instead of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Nevertheless, you can end up making this. Let's start this at 0 on the left, right? We'll just right click to make that 0. And then we can go to, there's 2048. And we can do a height of 32. Let's just make it silly for a second. And we'll click trim it, or make trim. And then we go down here and we see that. Okay. So that is 2048 wide by 32. Okay. Let's go to 4096 by 32. Make trim. There we go. You can see that is very, very thin to see. But when are you going to create an image like that? You're really not. So let's just bottom that out and right click that back up. We're going to create an 8x1 now. And there you go. We can middle mouse that to get a preview. So there is 2048 wide, and then this is a tile section of that 2048 wide. And there you go. The solid colors represent a tiling section of the map, right? So there's that for you. Okay. Now, this should all be self-explanatory when you just go through it. But let's just say that when you set the cell division, you know that it divides the image type, or sorry, the image size for presetting these easy to use division sections so that you can more easily get to your number that you're looking to get, right? You know that you can click cells to create cells. That feature can be improved to divide segments that are already created. We can improve this. The lock here, obviously, you can change it like so. That way, if your image is different size, like 4 and 8, now we have 256 and 512 as our numbers to work with for the width and height. Okay, so you can move around things as you choose. Let's lock that back on. And did we see the edges? Let's look at the edges real quick. We're going to right click on these spinners to get that set back to 0. 512 by 512 is fine. I'm going to turn on this edges. And just so we know that we see it, I'm going to make the color black. Let's just make it black. That's fine. Now I'll click make trim. We scroll down. We see the trim piece here, right? We can middle mouse click. We see the preview. There's our preview piece. And if we actually look here in this image, you can see that black outline edge is showing us our trim piece, right? We can click view trim map, and here we get the preview of that. We can also drag this open, and you see that black edge section is showing us that that's trim piece. Now, like I've mentioned before, I'm not sure if I mentioned it in this video. When we do color overlays that aren't edges, they can get marked within the texture itself, so you might not be able to use them as a great visual reference to what's happening here. The colored edges are great when you need them, so you can put that back on random color. But they can also cause visual disruption for how you're trying to get things done. So use whatever you view as best, right? Okay, so that's what we have for that. We've gone through the projects, I believe. The trim pieces. Let's go through applying trim pieces, but let's also unlock that project. Go over here. And we're going to take a line and click and click. We'll just drag some segments out so that we have some divisions here in the spline. I'll right click there. I'm now going to turn this on in the viewport. Enable render, enable in viewport. We're going to up the thickness on this. I'm going to slam that down to 4 sides and change the angle to 45 on that. There we go. Now I'm going to press Z to get a focus on it. Okay. I don't know why my zoom's acting funny. All right, so I'm going to Shift D to get an editable poly now. At this point, I'm just going to click, whoops, click and Shift click. I'm not sure why it's not giving it to me. It's acting funny. Okay, now I'm going to deselect that stuff. And there we are. We have some type of a wall. I'm going to Alt-1 to get Swift Loop. And we can add a trim piece at the bottom, a trim piece at the top. And we can add another section here. Why not? We'll just make one for the fun of it. All right, so we have something to work with now. What we're going to do is load this project. Let's find a project with that image because we already created one. Okay, so that's good. Let's load that. That looks good. We don't need to do any more work. So we can set our panel up just like this. Okay. But first, you know what? We do need to assign that to this, even for temporary use. So I'm going to right click, make physical material from it, and assign it to it. Okay. And now, let's see what we have here. We're going to load this into the UV editor. Now we have some UV data on that because we had created this from a spline. And now it's better looking. So we're going to go 3, select all. And I'm just going to do this for a quick beginning point. We're going to go to the handlers and box map. There we go. Wonderful. We're in motion. So at this point, I'm going to select, let's see here. We'll do this section. I'm going to right click here. Oh, that doesn't really look good. It's also upside down, so we can do this. And 3. Select everything. We're going to actually just invert check, and then I'm going to just rotate it all so it's right side up. Of course, that breaks what we had going, so I'm just going to get that going again. There we go. That's fine. And there we go. That's fine. Good enough for the examples. Now you see when I left click, it did that. It selected the entire element and then placed it onto the object. Okay, so that doesn't look bad right now. Now let's get into exactly what these clicks do. If I go into my editable my unwrap modifier polygon selection, and I select faces, I can click a trim piece for that piece to be automatically conformed to that selection's trim piece. Okay, so when you see something like this that's wide, yeah, we'll use this wide one here, but I put it into this type of space, obviously it's not going to look very good. That doesn't look bad. It happens to scale in a strange way, so let's find another one. We'll put something on this wide one. All I have to do is select one face within the element, and then I'll choose this square, and you see it automatically selects the element and places it into the UV space of that trim piece, right? We have that mapped just like that. That doesn't look great because it's off skew, so you have to manage how you're mapping things and what your space is like for the specific image. So I'm going to use this now with this piece. I'm going to right click, but I need to add something to that because that's not how that works. So we're going to shift and right click. Shift and right click will heal the piece and break it out, similar to Trim Jim's left click, okay? Then after we heal the piece and break it out, we're actually going to conform it to the UV space of the trim piece. So left click, and we're finally getting into the clicks. So this is direct information about the clicks right now. Left click, when you have an element selected, will assign the trim piece to that element. If I have a face selected in different elements, then left click a trim piece. it will cycle through the elements of the faces that I selected, and then assign that section to the UV space, right? Now, if something is rotated like 45 degrees, let's get a 45-degree rotate, and then I click this, okay? It's scaling within its own, I should open this up so you can see this. It's trying to conform what is rotated to that space. And that's exactly how it's supposed to work. We have ways of fixing that, which we'll get into. So you see here, it's rotated. I can click that. It moves it right to it, and it places in that trim sheet space. Okay, just like that. Now, if I want that to get fixed, I can shift and left click. That will fix it for me by doing a planar, basically. An average planar type setup and then conform to that space. So even if we had something that was distorted like this, I can shift. Well, here, let me rotate it. So it can be off skew or off angle and way larger than it should be. If I shift and click, it will automatically write it and set it to the space. Now, it could still be rotated 90, 180, etc. So you might have to fix that aspect. But there you are. You have that tool to do that. Okay, so if we get back to this, if I select this piece, and this piece, and shift click on this, we get that to cycle through, but we're also fixing that problem, any of the problems that we would have had. So I'm going to actually select all of these. Okay, I'm going to now move this one over here, move this one over here, and this one up here. So I'm going to select all of these now, and watch when I left click the piece. Which one was it again? Oh yeah, trim gym piece. Okay, you see they're all placed in the same spot, and they're doing exactly what they need to do. They're right for what they are being told to do with a left click. It's just moving whatever you have for the selection element, that UV element, to that space and conforming it to it. Okay, so we're going to go back to that again, but we're going to select all of this and shift left click, and now it's going to try to write itself and then apply its dimensions to that, to the element, right? We're putting the element to the dimensions of the trim piece. And that's how that works. So this will iterate through your selections if you have shift left click, and it will also iterate through on a single click, left click. So let's just take that again so you can see it. I'm going to left click. There we go. We iterated through and we returned the selection set to the user. That looks good. Okay. Now let's get into what the right click does. So at this point, if I want to take these sections that are actually parts of 3 different elements, and I want to make that one element, I can. So I'm going to find something that's close to that size. This one looks about right. It's going to be blurry, but what I'm going to do is shift right click, and you see that took that all and made an element and then conformed it to that space for me. That's great. Okay. So now if I have the same situation here, but I do this over here with 2 different elements, and I just right click without shift, it's not going to work. It's going to break out that section, okay, but it's not going to actually map it correctly. And what it's doing is it's taking the selection set that you provide to it, and it's moving it to that space to conform it. Let me give you an example here. Let's try to get this back in alignment. Okay, so you see this here. We can now move this. Let's rotate this. So when I right click this, we get the same thing as left clicking. It's just conforming it to the space. But there's something very different happening here compared to the other click. So you'll see now that I have this small section here. I need to move it over closer so it's a better example. Let's rotate it a bit. So whatever the selection actually looks like when we left click, it's going to break that selection apart from what it stands as, right? And not break per se, but watch what happens. I'll left click. So it takes each element and tries to map them to that section, right? We already know that that's not right, so we need to shift and left click, and that will try to make it look better, right? There we go. That doesn't look bad, I mean, for what we're providing to the system. So now I'm going to do this with the right click so that you get the better idea of what's really happening with the right click. And this is going to take the selection and conform it as it is. So we have a selection just like this. I right click and you'll see it moved it to that space exactly as it was. And it just conformed the minimum maximum, the size, scale, dimensions, right to what I selected on the trim piece, right? So let's take this again and move this out. And we'll just do this again. And I'm going to now select that trim piece with the trim gem, I guess, sign. I'm not sure what we can call that. And I'll right click now. And you see that it is simply moved to that spot and conform to that space, right? So that can be useful in many instances, a lot of instances. And if we didn't want that to happen, if we wanted to actually heal this, we can select this. Now I'm going to shift and right click. And what this will do is planar map what we have. More or less, it's going to break these out, heal these, and essentially give it an average planar map. But it's also going to conform it to that space that we defined in the trim piece. Okay, so left click will iterate through these pieces like so. Okay. Shift left click will planar map and iterate through and conform the pieces as so. Right click will take the selection as is and try to apply it. That's a bad example because I placed them right next to one another. Let's do something like this. There we go. So it's just applying it as it currently stands. It doesn't change the selection set, but it does change the dimensions and shape, or not shape, but the minimum maximum dimensions of it. So it scales it to that trim piece. And then if we actually shift and right click, we get the heal and conform. There you go. I think you guys will have a lot of fun with this. I think I covered everything here. I plan to make more videos when I get to version 1. So there'll be more updates and other things like that to learn about. Thank you for sitting through these long videos. I know it's not fun. It's possible some of you can learn the system without even listening to one word I say, but I think it's appropriate that I help lead anybody that has problems getting through this. So thank you for sitting through all the videos, and I appreciate you.